This is what happens when you give a metalhead auteur full creative control and they don't give a shit if anybody likes them. Michael Myers is barely in this, and somehow that makes it scarier. It's gory, it's violent, it's incoherent, and maybe even a little visionary. I'm kind of split on this one. What's one of your favorite Rob Zombie films? Day 69 of 365, today's movie, Halloween 2. This one's directed by a former Pee-wee's Playhouse production assistant, Rob Zombie. And this one stars Scout Taylor Compton, Malcolm McDowell, and Tyler Mane as the unkillable Michael Myers. This may have been one of the most violent movies I subjected myself to as a teenager. The memory will never leave me of sitting in the theater during the curb stomp scene and literally covering my ears, and that not being enough to cut out the visceral foley that was entering my skull. This might sound like a complaint, but actually this is something that I loved and would bring me to become a horror director in my own right. I actually might be alone on this one, but I prefer H2 to H1. The first Rob Zombie Halloween feels muzzled. It's restrained, it's really held back by the franchise that it comes from. This sequel wasn't even supposed to happen, and so this feels like a wholly different beast from the first one. That's not to say that I don't have my own complaints. The first 30 minutes of this movie is basically a dialogueless short film with a disgusting monologue to open it, and ends with them repeatedly stabbing an Oscar Award winner, Octavia Spencer. I'm not kidding when I tell you that this is a jarring way to open a movie. From there, it ends up being kind of boring, and the plot proper doesn't kick off until about 45 minutes into the movie. These are real complaints, and I understand if you hate this movie, but there's a lot here that I really love, so I'd love to break down my 3 favorite things about H2. The first thing that I really love about this movie is Scout Taylor Compton. The first film, she was playing a pretty faithful recreation of Laurie Strode, if not updated a little bit. In this sequel, they did something different here. This is not your average scream queen. This is not your average damsel in distress. Instead, they're giving her real psychosis to deal with. That's something that only Rob Zombie would have come up with. I love this depiction and this deviation from the norm for what it brings to the genre. Suddenly, there's lots more options for the way this finale can happen. And say what you will, to get us there, this is a really different thing. And I love when people swing for the fences trying something different. This was actually so impactful on me as a character when I was young that I actually wrote my own horror movie with a character inspired by this version of Laurie Strode. Not by Jamie Lee Curtis, but by Scout Taylor Compton's version of this kind of mentally fucked up person who's understandably in this place because of the events of the first movie. Yeah, the whole opening might be a dream sequence, but that's the kind of dreams that she is thinking up. And as that becomes part of her own psyche by the end of the movie, they actually make this retcon of having her be one of the Myers start to make sense. This might be a DNA issue in the family, and I love that they're at least trying something different here. Something else I really love about Halloween 2 is the fact that this is a Rob Zombie joint, so the gore is going to be fantastic. The man does not rely on CGI. He does not do cheap squibs. This is a guy that is going to really commit to the bit. I already mentioned the curb stomp at the top, which is probably my favorite effect in the whole movie. The look of the effect, the Foley, the violence, it all really gels together in an awesome way. But honestly, the whole opening of this movie works so well for me. The original pitch for this redo was going to be Rob Zombie doing Hellraiser meets Michael Myers. That was their opening pitch, and that's why they leaned so hard into the violence on this run, even when they removed Hellraiser from the overall script. I love that that is the result that we get here, because wow, what a amazing display of practical gore effects. Now, again, I've talked about my time on sets. These days end up being the favorite of people working. We can have a great time shooting dialogue, we can have an awesome time shooting the scares and the screams, but the days that we're making a mess, that's the best day on set. I would even get in and help clean up the viscera on my own sets, because that's half the fun, is getting your hands dirty making this kind of stuff. Zombie has never been a stranger to this, and so I love that that's what he brought to the forefront, even more so in this sequel. It's more violent, it's more bloody, it's more over the top. Man, the sound mixing in the theater drills into your brain. It is cut so sharp and so front and forward. And I gotta compliment it for that. You gotta give credit where credit is due, and maybe you don't like the movie, but you gotta admit, this is excellent, excellent gore. The third and final thing that I love about this movie is the needle drop at the end. Restraint and Rob Zombie are not two words that I would normally put together, but the restraint of waiting until the very last seconds to drop the dun 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 dun, that's restraint. They could have done it at the end of the 30-minute short film that I mentioned at the top. They could have done it towards the middle of the movie to really amp up the feeling, but instead they wait until the very end. This movie doesn't get a sequel. There's no trilogy for Rob Zombie. So really the last thing that he gives us is his nod, his little hat turn back to John Carpenter at the end here. I love that. I respect that. That kind of restraint in a movie that is otherwise fully unrestrained shows someone that knows what they're doing to a degree. I don't know. What do you think? Are you a fan of this movie like me? Do you kind of hate this one and prefer Zombies First? Are you more of a fan of the Greengrass trilogy that we get later, which is also excellent in its own right, don't get me wrong. I'm just curious because I sometimes feel alone on loving H2. We're gonna stay with gore, but we're gonna switch genres with our next movie. We're talking about Gamer by Neville Dean and Taylor. The boys are back. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow.